Well, welcome everybody. I'm Paul Yura. I'm the Warning Coordination Meteorologist with the National Weather Service office in New Braunfels, Texas. This is officially Skywarn training. Who has been to a Skywarn training before? A lot of you. Okay, at least half, but more than half looks like our first timer. So congratulations. Good job. Thanks for coming here. This Skywarn training, the Skywarn severe weather training started decades ago, mainly to our amateur radio operator partners. They were mainly our storm spotters out there before cell phones, before technology and everything else. And so now, while we still train a lot of the amateur radio operators, the general public is a big part of the process of keeping everybody safe. Intel, situational awareness with what's happening at the ground, with weather and all of that. So keep it fairly informal. That QR code on the very front is the same phone number that's actually on the business card that's in the back. Okay, so we'll show that phone number a couple of times toward the very end. So if you're not able to QR code it, then don't worry. Just use the phone number that's on the business card. It's the same one. Do this. Every year I start out the show kind of showing you a couple of images from this past year or so that were pretty impactful. The one on the left there was some hail pictures of a very large, at least baseball size, almost close to softball size hailstone that went through Austin back in September. September is not typically a month where we talk a lot about severe thunderstorms. It's mainly hurricanes or tropical weather coming in off the coast or something. Big supercell developed along Interstate 35 and went from Georgetown all the way down through North Austin and produced nearly $600 million worth of damage. That was their largest hailstorm that they've ever had. You had yours a couple of years ago.
When
right?
was that?
The big hailstorm here?
No.
Oh, that one? Last year, September of last year. It went right down through the heart of Austin and everything. Mainly Georgetown and Round Rock, to be honest.
It wasn't about a year before that they had that tornado kind of in that same area.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Ours were bigger.
Yes. Yours was bigger.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah, yours was bigger. And we'll talk about yours here in a little bit. The picture in the middle, that is a screen capture of a small tornado going right across Interstate 35 at Fort Sam in San Antonio in October at 8 in the morning on a weekday. You know how many calls we got about this tornado on the ground for 18 minutes? Zero. Zero. Nobody called us.
Yeah, the neighbor,
Nobody let us.
neighbor calls.
Nobody let us know. There was a tornado going through San Antonio for 18 minutes on a weekday in the morning, where people were taking videos of it while driving. Nobody called the National Weather Service saying, hey, by the way, there's a tornado on the ground. Because this was with a rain shower. This was not with a big severe storm. We didn't have a tornado watch out. We didn't have a severe thunderstorm warning out. They were pretty benign looking rain showers around this area. And nobody called us. So, even though we've trained thousands of weather spotters in Medina County over the decades,
Yeah, but they're
nobody
not
called.
text at the same time.
So I'm sure that's the reason why we do these Skywarn trainings, to remind people. Yes, if you see something like this, call 911, call the National Weather Service. Okay, so lesson learned. That's what we have. So Skywarn equates to storm spotters. This is where we get to tell you that yes, we have a bunch of great technology out there. We have a great Doppler radar. We have a couple of them that we utilize. One out in Brackettville on Highway 90. We call it near the Del Rio area, kind of near Brackettville. That's a Doppler radar we utilize, and of course we utilize one right outside our door in New Braunfels. Great technology, it sees a lot of stuff. It cannot usually verify though what's actually happening at the ground. It gives us guesstimates of hail size. It gives us guesstimates of how much rain is falling. Guesstimates of how the storm is maybe spinning and rotating. But if it comes down to it, we want people to actually tell us what they're seeing. Send us a picture of what they're actually getting. And that's kind of why the Storm Spotter program is so important. Yes, sir?
You know, last year when we had this class, there was some discussion about bringing a radar station back over here, or a Doppler station back over here in this area. Do you have an update on that? Or?
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. Yeah, a private company is going around the United States and saying that they want to be, and they are putting up some small little Doppler radars. They are not very powerful, but they are in some areas. There are some areas that don't have great coverage with Doppler radar. there's coverage, but it sees very high up into the thunderstorms, especially out like in East Texas, West Texas, where there's some, they perceive it as gaps. There's no gaps, but they just don't see very low to the ground, where that's the best, what we want to see. So yes, as of right now, this was a possibility, but they're not going to put it here.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Since you said you like pictures so much, is the phone number that we connect to able to receive?
That is a landline telephone. So I was going to get to that at the end, but no, that is a you cannot text images to that phone number that we're going to be reporting to. That is a voice line. So when it comes down to it, we'll talk about this at the end, but if you have images to share, when you call that phone number, we'll give you an email to send it to. Or if you're a big person for social media, you can always post that picture onto X or on Facebook or something as well. But yeah. When it comes down to the deaths that have happened in Texas since 1990, about 1,000 people have died from weather events. You can kind of see where flooding makes up a lot of them. You can see where cold and heat and tornadoes are kind of second and third. And then a whole lot of other different weather events cause some other sort of fatalities. And yes, we've had someone killed by hail before, not here, but up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area with very, very large hail. Again, we'll talk about hail here in a little bit. But definitely flooding is kind of one of our big things around here. But tornadoes scare a lot of people. We don't have a lot of deaths in Texas from tornadoes, especially lately, over the past couple of decades. Those tornado deaths are really kind of from the early to late 90s, where we had things like Gerald, we had Eagle Pass, and then we had some big ones up around Fort Worth and so forth to do that.
Paul, question.
Yes, sir.
So years ago, we used to get updates every once in a while on videos and things for flash flood alley. Do we know of has there anything been done with that in the last several years?
Not so much. Not so much. It's just like anything, many years ago, probably like in the 2015, 2017, we had a lot of rain, right? So flash flooding was really on everybody's kind of radar. After years and years of droughts, and we haven't had a lot of flash flood fatalities, people find other things to kind of concentrate their effort on. So the unfortunate thing, it's an ebb and flow. We're going to be flooding again eventually. We're going to have a lot of rain, a lot of flash flooding, and so I assume when that happens, you'll see an uptick again of things like creating PSA videos and so forth. So it's just like anything. It kind of comes and goes. The National Weather Service is all about protecting life and property. The partnership that I have with emergency management here and with the cities and with the counties and with the region is huge. The emergency manager are the core partners of the National Weather Service. Yes, it does take some other folks, the TV meteorologists, the media in general, first responders, amateur radio operators, and general public. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. And so it's just not about me, it's not about Mark, it's about everybody kind of working together, being the eyes out there, letting us know what's happening. I don't just drive around looking for bad weather. Mark doesn't just drive around looking for bad weather. We kind of equate it always to like the fire departments. The fire department doesn't just drive around looking for smoke, right? They rely on people calling in saying they see a fire. Same thing, we rely on people to give us reports back to the National Weather Service. We used to be called the Weather Bureau a long, long time ago. That name changed back in the 1970s. We get our funding from the Department of Commerce. It goes down to NOAA, and then we are an agency underneath NOAA. What you see on the map there are 122 field offices of the National Weather Service, 24/7 operations. In fact, just yesterday, we were actually doing the Miami, Florida office forecast. They are one of our backup offices. We back them up and they can back us up. We also have that capability of Corpus Christi and Brownsville. We practice backing each other up quite often. So just in case something weird is happening, just in case communications go down, which happens still, fiber line is cut, and before you know it, we can't get our forecast out to anybody. Another office can basically duplicate our job, and vice versa. We can duplicate Miami's job and Corpus Christi and Brownsville. So backup of a backup of a backup possibility. So a lot of redundancy just to make sure that our products and warnings can always get out. This is our jurisdiction. You can kind of see us. Medina County, in kind of the tan color there are the 33 counties that we have jurisdiction over. About 36,000 square miles. It's roughly about the size of the state of Maine. That's how big our jurisdiction is. And as you can imagine, as we head west in my jurisdiction here, this is high Chihuahuan Desert. Not a ton of rain out here on the Rio Grande. And then as I spread east across the jurisdiction, the average rainfall gets more, and especially as I head off to the east, along Interstate 10, like out by Shiner and Hallettsville and Cuero and LaGrange and Round Top, it becomes quite rainy. You know, upwards of 40 inches of rain per year is an average out there. So differing topography, differing weather situations, differing climate. So it's a challenging area. And of course, right in the middle, you have the Interstate 35 metro areas, which flooding is enhanced because of metropolitan and urbanization and everything else. And of course, we have a lot of large rivers that flow from there down to the Rio, down to the Gulf of Mexico. So a lot of rivers, a lot of hydrology. It's busy. There are some years that we're not as busy because there's mainly fires and drought, but that keeps us busy as well. Besides just the 7-day forecast that we issue for all those 33 counties, we also issue advisories, watches, and warnings. So from left to right is the severity of the product. Warnings are the worst thing we can issue. Those are the ones that are imminent threat, the things that we lose a lot of lives on, etc. The watch in the middle, think of that as the ingredients are set, the ingredients are here, but nothing's happened yet.
The stove ain't on yet.
Exactly. We think it might happen. I always kind of equate it to a cooking recipe. The ingredients are there sitting on the table, but nothing's been made yet. So that's your preparing time. That's your understanding of, okay, there's a tornado watch out for the next 6 hours. Okay, my plans of going out and like going to the campsite or floating the river or going whatever, maybe I need to rethink that. Flash flood watches or flood watches, maybe issued a whole day early. So yeah, big plans tomorrow, the flood watch is in effect for tomorrow. Yeah, maybe we need to rethink some things about where to go or what we're going to be doing. The flood advisories or the dense fog advisories or the wind advisories, they're cautionary sort of products, and meaning that we're probably going to have some travel delays. It's going to take you longer to get to San Antonio on a dense fog advisory, and you're probably going to have to drive a lot slower. Same thing if we issue a flood advisory, nuisance flooding. Some of the streets that tend to flood quick, some of the low water crossings that tend to fill up quick are going to be there. We usually don't lose a lot of lives in the advisory days, but you can imagine if there's traffic, as there's dense fog, you can have some traffic accidents with that kind of thing. So definitely watches and warnings are our most impactful sort of weather events and products that we issue. We can technically tag a word emergency on a couple of those products. A flash flood warning can be upgraded to a flash flood emergency. A tornado warning can be upgraded to a tornado emergency. We've never had to issue a tornado emergency here. Those are for catastrophic tornado events. We've had to issue several flash flood emergencies in South Central Texas. The last times really like in 2015 with the Wimberley flood and then some of the big floods we've had in San Antonio where we're talking about a foot of rain in a couple of hours that caused catastrophic sort of flooding. So normally those products start out as a normal warning, and then we hear about or we get intel of catastrophic damage, or we know that's going to be catastrophic damage, and that's where we'll tag that word emergency on it. And what that does, that really gets the media's attention, the emergency manager's attention, knowing that, oh gosh, I'm being busy for 2 years, 3 years dealing with FEMA, recovery efforts, and all that. It becomes a year-long sort of process and event is what it does. So, National Weather Service issues a severe thunderstorm warning. What does that mean? There's a lot of thunderstorms out there. We had thunderstorms today. Most of them were not severe. Most of them were fairly benign. They were thunderstorms. But some of them can evolve into producing large hail damaging winds or tornadoes. Large hail, by definition, we mean at least the size of a quarter or bigger. The reason why we use that criteria is because going back and looking at insurance information and insurance data, that's typically where you start repairing roofs. You start repairing dents on cars. Typically hail smaller than that, you don't have a lot of structural damage. And there's not a lot of insurance claims with hail like dime size or penny size. That's sub-severe hail. You can still totally destroy your garden, okay? Or your crops, can shred them, but as far as property damage with cars and roofs, typically not. Wind damage, 58 miles per hour, that's kind of an odd number, 58, very exact. It equates to 50 knots. If you're familiar with marine terms and stuff, that's actually 50 knots of wind. So 50 miles per hour, a good rule of thumb is that's when you start getting really big branches breaking off trees. Healthy branches off hardwood trees. Softwood trees, what's a softwood tree? Hackberry. Ash. Bradford pears. Any tree that grows fast is typically a softwood tree. Hardwood trees, like most of the oaks, grow really nice and slow, so they're very strong. So a lot of the softwood trees, at 40, 45, 50 mile per hour, you can start some big branches breaking off those. But the good hardwood trees, about the size of your forearm, 2 to 3 inches in diameter, that's some good 50 to 60 mile per hour winds bringing those sort of branches down. So speed of wind is just hard to judge. You see wind blowing sideways and the rain blowing sideways. Well, until you start getting damaged, it's really hard to estimate. So that's why we typically tell you to start reporting when you see damage of things. Because otherwise, unless you have an anemometer or weather station at your house, you may not know what wind speed we're actually kind of talking about. And of course, tornadoes too. That's deemed a severe thunderstorm. So this is a map that actually shows, the Storm Prediction Center issues severe thunderstorm watches and tornado watches. So where in the country are most watches issued? So what this equates to is kind of where is the most active part of the country when it comes to severe weather.
Welcome to Oklahoma.
So Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, the middle part of the country there, you can kind of see. It kind of leaks a little bit down into like the southeast United States when it comes to both tornado and severe thunderstorm watches. But interestingly enough, when I separate out just severe thunderstorm watches, here in Medina County, we average probably upwards of about 6 to 8 kind of watches per year, but middle part of the country, a lot of severe thunderstorm watches. Almost double the amount, like up to a dozen in the middle part of the country.
So how come California doesn't have any thunderstorms? Is it just because they only get rain when they're up there in the Pacific?
Correct. They don't have a lot of really humid days. Humid days comes from warm water. The Pacific Ocean is very cold. So they don't get a lot of thunderstorm days. They get a lot of rain sometimes. But right, it's not thunderstorms, it's not severe storms. So it's usually light to moderate rain and this and that. They can get flooding and everything, but as far as pure thunderstorms, it's just very, very rare. You have to have warm bodies of ocean. So Gulf of Mexico, any sort of wind coming off of the east and southeast out of the Gulf provides enough fuel to get thunderstorms in general. We'll talk about thunderstorms here in a little bit. Interestingly enough, tornado watches, look how it shifts down. Over the past 20 years, they've had massive tornado outbreaks in the southeast United States. They call it now Dixie Alley. Kind of the subset area of the country where they get a lot of tornadoes. Also, landfalling hurricanes and tropical systems produce tornadoes. So you combine severe weather in the spring plus a lot of landfalling hurricanes over the past 20 years in this section of the Gulf of Mexico, and that's part of why you have this zone of number of tornado watches kind of in the United States. But again, east of the Rocky Mountains. You go west of the Rocky Mountains, yes, you can get some isolated storms sometimes, but just not the severe weather like we usually have east of the Rockies. We do get some help from some folks with the National Weather Service that work in a place called the Storm Prediction Center. It is in Norman, Oklahoma, as with a lot of weather stuff. It's in Norman, Oklahoma. That's where I went to school, was in Norman, Oklahoma.
Survival of the fittest.
Wait,
I know, right?
wait, you're a Sooner?
I am a Longhorn, but I had to go somewhere that teaches meteorology. And that was either becoming an Aggie or a Sooner. And both were very bad choices. So I picked the lesser of two evils, and I went to Oklahoma. So I still bleed orange, but I do have a proud degree of meteorology from the University of Oklahoma. But I like to see Oklahoma lose every chance I get. I'm very torn inside. It's very chaotic in my head as far as I know, right?
You go dormant?
So, interestingly enough, we get this guidance from the Storm Prediction Center that their weather service, National Weather Service, severe weather experts. They give us forecasts out to 8 days, basically, where in the United States are all the ingredients coming together for severe storms. And we'll talk about those ingredients here in a little bit. But they really got to know their stuff. And so they produce these outlooks. This here, on the far right, this is an example of what the outlook looked like. Basically 2 years ago, where we had a really big tornado outbreak in Round Rock area and in the northern part of central Texas. The closest one we had around here, we had near Seguin, we had a pretty good tornado around that area. But as you can see, a lot of the area along Interstate 35 north of New Braunfels was in red. That's a moderate risk of severe weather. Last time our region had been put under a Category 4 of risk was 10 years prior. Actually, the day where we had tornadoes in Devine. and Italia. That was the last time we were under a moderate risk of severe weather. Both of those days producing actually pretty long track tornadoes. So for us, this was kind of a red flag that, okay, hey, everybody, we have a really big ingredient list. You're going to be busy today. And sure enough, we were. It was one of our biggest tornado outbreaks we've had on March 21st, 2022. Most of our severe weather days are kind of in the marginal, slight, and enhanced risk, the 1, 2, and 3s. Yes, sir.
So that's something I always monitor on my phone from y'all's website. And
Uh-huh.
I'll tell you, anything yellow or better, y'all are pretty darn accurate.
No, right. And the forecasters that put out those outlooks, and we have some interaction back and forth. We have a chat room where we go back and forth with the forecasters at the Storm Prediction Center and kind of maybe, tweak out the areas a little bit. But for the most part, we haven't been in a high-risk area since 2007. And what happened in 2007? The Eagle Pass tornado that killed like 10 people. Big supercell crossed the river, hit Eagle Pass right there. So yeah, those level 4 and 5 days, that's where storm chasers fly in and drive hundreds of miles to get to our region because they know that there's going to be probably long track tornadoes on those days. And so luckily for us, we're pretty far south in Texas. Most of the severe weather, like we saw on that map, is mainly to our north and to our northeast. But yeah, even if we're in a level 1, 2, or 3, we can still get a tornado. It's just that they typically aren't those high-end tornadoes like that. So again, it's guidance for us to kind of look at. Everybody here should have at least 3 ways of getting weather warnings. Many of you may have your favorite app on your phone. Social media. One app that I would like to kind of advertise a little bit is the FEMA app. Because you can save 5 locations in it, and then you can choose which weather watches and warnings you get from it. And that way, whenever the National Weather Service issues a warning or a watch, you will get a text through that app. There's a lot of private apps out there too, like the Weather Channel, WeatherBug, AccuWeather, name some other ones, right? And they can do the same thing. Put in a zip code or an address, and whenever we issue the warnings, they'll look at the maps and you'll get that sort of text. So make sure you have multiple ways of doing that. I will talk about this one app that personally I don't like. And it's the app that comes free on your phone. That forecast app that just says weather. Like on my Apple, there's just a weather app. It's junk. Okay, now it's a forecasting app. It doesn't give you warnings or anything, but that forecast part is just, I don't know where it comes from.
It's never right.
There's no documentation of like where that comes from. Most likely it's a weather model that they just populate every zip code in the United States. There's no human interaction to it. It's not like us sitting in New Braunfels looking at our 33 counties and tweaking the forecast and human doing this and that. So be very cautious about that kind of thing.
I like your Climb app. I use Climb,
Okay.
the National Weather, or NOAA's.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah. So just be cautious of that kind of stuff. Old school way is the weather radio, and it still works. It's a VHF radio signal that comes from our office, goes to a transmitter. It's your own personal tornado siren for your house. Okay? Technology still works. It makes some really good ones. Shouldn't spend more than $40 on a weather radio. They have really small little portable ones. They have ones for your desk like that.
How good are the, because I'm starting to get these notifications on my phone.
Like this, right? The emergency alerts.
Yeah, but
Stand by.
it's not because of an app. It's-
Correct, and I'm going to talk about it in like 1 second. Social media is good and bad, we all know that. There's some really junky weather social media out there. People just will go onto a website, look at a picture of a weather model, tell you to do a screen capture, and the thing is viral because it's showing something happening in 14 days. And then I get calls, and people say, I heard that there's going to be a big winter storm. I was like, you heard what? You heard where? And it's some social media thing of somebody that has no business posting that junk. But it gets traction, and people start doing it, and we hate it. We spend more time quelling rumors like that than actually trying to do real social media because all that junk is kind of out there. So
All the toilet paper is sold out.
exactly, toilet paper selling out. All the National Weather Service offices have our own social media sites. So obviously we're ones that you can follow. We're NWS San Antonio on X. We have Facebook and Instagram and stuff. And most of the TV station folks are really good too. The county and city emergency management offices will be our megaphone also. So just make sure it's someone that you kind of know about, and it's not just something that shows up on your Facebook newsfeed. Because again, some of that is days old, first of all. You can't really get a lot of real-time weather information on Facebook anymore. Because the algorithm they run, so like we don't post any real-time weather information on Facebook. Because by the time it hits your newsfeed, it could literally be 3 days from now. We have no control over that. Okay, so just be aware that that's how the Facebook algorithms actually work. It has nothing to do with timeliness or anything else, so you have to really be cautious of that. To your point about these alerts that come to your phone automatically, they're called wireless emergency alerts. When you buy your smartphones, that function is turned on, which is good. Okay, so it's an opt-out sort of a thing.
It'll wake you up at night sometimes.
The way it works is that, here's me, there's a back of my head, okay? Let's say I'm going to issue a flash flood warning. That includes Hondo, right? It includes part of Medina County. I can draw the box of the flash flood warning any shape I want. It can be a square, it can be a rectangle, a parallelogram, whatever. But I'm going to be drawing it so everybody in that warning box, I think, is going to be affected by flash flood. That box, the vertices of that box, the latitude, longitude points, get sent to the cell phone carriers.
That is incredible technology. So
They will then overlay it on their cell phone tower map and the towers that they have, Verizon as an example. If these are the 3 Verizon towers within the flash flood warning box that I drew, my phone, if I'm Verizon and I'm using one of those towers, it will send me that flash flood warning text saying you're in the warning. You didn't have to sign up for anything. All you had to have done was keep these alerts on instead of turning them off. Now, I personally have turned off the Amber Alert one. That's just me. The emergency alerts are the weather ones. These public safety alerts are the ones that Mark can actually trigger.
Yeah, because
That Mark can actually send out.
I use WEA as well, through iPods.
Right. So the county and city emergency managers and other entities that have access to IPAWS, a federal sort of send-out program, can do the exact same thing for non-weather emergencies. So boil water notices, some sort of shelter-in-place notice, an evacuation notice because of a fire, all that. So it's an incredible technology, as you mentioned. It is very rare that we go anywhere now where a tornado is hit, where we've had a successful warning, and someone doesn't say, oh yeah, I got the message on the phone. Or the kids are literally telling the parents about it because the kid has got the cell phone, and they're going, we just got a tornado warning.
Yeah, it's not showing up on my Facebook yet.
So it's crazy. What's interesting too is that, imagine this, you're at a big event, a football stadium, and you get put under a warning. Imagine 100,000 people all getting a text saying tornado warning in effect. That stadium has got to be prepared for that. Meaning they need to have already a message literally in seconds they can put up on the Jumbotron saying, everybody stay put. You're in the safest location. Because if not, everybody's just going to have to try to figure out, we need to leave. And most likely those stadiums are going, no, you need to stay here because if you go out of the stadium, well then you're going to be exposed to the tornado, right? So we have discussions with the Alamo Dome, the big universities, so they know that, yeah, you need to have these pre-canned messages that when everybody's phones start going off, you can react very, very quickly and tell people what or what not to do, like that. So they're called wireless emergency alerts is what they're called. Let's talk about some of these hazards. Lightning, flash flooding, hail, thunderstorm winds, and tornadoes. We'll talk about each one of these thunderstorm hazards. Lightning facts. 14 people died last year from lightning in the United States. Many more were injured. Most of them, when I kind of show you what people were doing, most of them were hit and killed from these type of bolts. These are called bolts out of the blue. Notice where the bolt is hitting the ground, it is likely not raining there. There's blue sky above on the far left. And the right side too, the storm is right here. But yet the bolt is hitting miles and miles away from the actual parent thunderstorm like that. So most people are hit with lightning when it's not even raining outside. The storm is nearby them. Okay, so whenever you're hearing thunder, you're in that zone where you could get one of those bolts out of the blue like that. 50,000 degrees, 300,000 amps, and 100 million volts. That's how much a single lightning strike, on average, will carry. So it's a lot. It's a lot of heat, it's a lot of power. This is where the fatalities were last year. We had 2 in Texas. Really sad case. A dad and a 6-year-old son walking home from the bus stop. were struck and killed by lightning. We had people boating, walking home, construction, on a horse, checking on cattle, roofing, swimming, walking, hunting. We've had picking blueberries. Who knew that was dangerous? Well, if you're doing it near a storm, it's a dangerous thing to do. Walking on the beach. We've had someone scuba diving killed before. We've had someone on a jet ski killed before. A lot of water related, but a lot of land obviously also. Just doing pretty benign things, but still you're in that danger zone. The one car, driving a car, the car was not struck by lightning. A tree was struck, and the tree fell on the car and killed the person. Your car is actually a safe place to be, because you're in a metal cage, and the metal will direct the electricity around you. It's called a Faraday cage. So there's videos of cars getting struck by lightning while they're driving, and the person inside is safe.
Unless it's a Tesla. The battery gets hammered with all the power.
I don't know. I want to find out. I don't want to find out. This is what happens to trees. We talk about softwood trees. Softwood trees, when they're hit, sometimes will explode like that. So all that moisture inside the actual tree itself will turn to steam and then blow apart. Our hardwood trees, like our live oaks, probably won't explode because they're so dense, but you'll lose the bark, or maybe it'll split in half. And sometimes even the tree catches on fire. That could happen too. But trees get struck all the time. They're tall objects, and so obviously we do have a lot of people that are seeking shelter underneath trees because they don't want to get wet from the rain. And that is the worst place to go. You need to be in a building with walls and windows to keep the electricity out. Just having a cover over your head is not good enough. The dugout, it's no good. The marina, the dock, or the pavilion at the park is not good, because even though you have a roof over your head, that means nothing. Because lightning can still strike the ground over there and still travel through the ground to get to you, or through the air and still zap you. You need to be in an enclosed structure to kind of keep the electricity out. Watch this, pine trees. And then wait for it. Here it comes.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so right, that's how you can die in a car, is if something kind of comes down. Same thing, if you're in a tent and you put the tent, in the campsite underneath all the trees, and lightning strikes the tree, well then a big branch could come down and crush the tent too. We lose a lot of livestock every year because they huddle underneath the trees. Those are dead livestock. Picture on the far right is a PGA golfing event. You would think that the PGA would know what they're doing with this kind of stuff, but here's the issue. Yes, they can get the golfers off the golf course. But what do you do with 100,000 people that were bussed in, their car is 2 miles away? There's no big shelters on the golf course, are there? For those of you that have golfed, there may be one little shack to go eat, or a bathroom or something, and that is it. So yeah, these people were huddled underneath the big pine tree. It got struck, and so here's all the people tending to the victims that are on the ground there, probably in cardiac arrest.
Well, after working the Valero Open here for 12 years, I can tell you they have a meteorologist.
Yes.
But they don't put out alerts to the public that are on the course. They're only there
Just for the players.
They're only there to take care of those high-dollar players.
No, exactly.
I was getting my weather from your office when I was managing those.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the tricky part is the same thing with some of these big events. A big air show, right? The San Antonio Air Show. Up in Austin, they have ACL. They have South by Southwest. Some of those are easier because there's downtown buildings that you can quickly go into. But in these big gigantic parks, think about Fiesta and Oyster Bake. Right? We've been out there at Oyster Bake, 100,000 people. There's only so many people you can quickly shove into a campus building. You can't shove 100,000 people in there. So situational awareness. The bigger events are like the float parades downtown, where there's 200, 300,000 people. If a storm rolls in, it's a roll of the dice. Where are the people going to go? And it becomes very, very dangerous. If lightning does strike somebody, can you touch them? Yes. The electricity instantly leaves the body. So you can immediately start some sort of medical something. Find the AED. Call 911. Maybe you need to do CPR because they're in cardiac arrest. Whatever it is, you can immediately try to do something, because you're not going to get electrocuted by touching that person. It's already left their body. Males, yeah, not good.
So I had somebody figured out why.
Mother Nature seems a little one-sided.
But the females know why, right? The females know why this is. The males don't want to admit why it is, but it is what it is, right? Look at the days of the week. Saturday has the most, Mondays have the least. So as you can tell, outdoor events, right? Outdoor events are peaked out on weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and then most everybody goes back to work on Mondays, and you don't have as many people outdoors. So that's why the skewing there. Leisure activities make up more than half of all the fatalities. We have a saying now, when thunder roars, go indoors. It's pretty simple. If you are hearing thunder outside, you are close enough to get struck. When I was small, we had a 30-second rule, where they wanted you to count to 30 and everything. We don't even teach that anymore. It's if you hear thunder, you're close enough. That equates basically to the 30 seconds, to be honest. Anything more than that, the lightning is so far away, the thunder will dissipate before it hits you. And you can hear it. So anything beyond 30 seconds is deemed far enough away anyway, you won't be able to hear the thunder. So for the Little League games, all this kind of stuff, if it's thundering out, they shouldn't be playing. That's the bare bone rule. But who are the worst? The parents. Screaming at the referees, screaming at the people that want to stop the game. It's our fault, because we don't understand a lot of this. We don't understand the danger. And yes, there have been kids killed on playing fields, kids getting hit on playing fields. It doesn't happen a lot, obviously, but yes, that danger is there and it's plausible. So, water-related and sports are the two highest out of all the leisure activities. What sports do you think are the highest fatality rated with lightning? Fishing, golf, swimming, soccer and golf. And soccer is outnumbering golf now, but there have been a lot of previous golf fatalities. The thing with golf now is that, especially if it's a municipal course or any sort of private course, there's some that kicks you off the golf course. I mean, there's a marshal there, or they still call them a marshal, I think, right? That goes around and kicks you off the course. For the soccer fields, there's unpoliced soccer fields everywhere. You know, an HOA park, a neighborhood park that people just gather and play soccer. So, but yeah, there's disc golf.
Disc golf 3%, yeah.
So that probably
There's
equates to
those metal poles for it.
Well, again, you're around trees, right? There's always, it's pretty rare you get a disc golf place that doesn't have any sort of trees. You want it a little bit hard.
And you're waving a metallic stick around in the air.
I know, right?
Oh, what could go wrong here?
Any questions about lightning before we go on? Did you guys ever hear about heat lightning?
Yes.
Heat lightning does not exist. There is no lightning that is created because of heat. What heat lightning is are thunderstorms so far away that they're producing lightning, but you never hear the thunder. So on a given summer night, you can see lightning flashes like along the Texas coast or even offshore. It's 100 miles away and you can see lightning flashing.
We have them here all the time.
Right. But those are thunderstorms. It's just that you are far enough away that, no, you don't have to rush inside because that's 100 miles away. But that's what heat lightning is. It's a misnomer.
It was heat lightning.
Okay, by far the number one storm-related killer, especially around here, but overall, is actually flash flooding. We have more people annually killed by flash flooding with a thunderstorm than like tornadoes. Around here, we live in Flash Flood Alley. The slogan, "Turn around, don't drown," actually started in Texas and is now a nationwide sort of safety slogan when it comes to flash flooding. We live in a perfect storm of an area where we have big rain events, we have topography, we have rivers, and we have a lot of people. There aren't too many places in the country where all of that kind of comes together, especially the poor soil type kind of stuff, because, right, Medina County is divided in half, right? The northern half is topography, the other half is good soil, or at least pretty deep soil where you can farm and do everything else. Especially in the hill country though, you can't dig a hole. I mean, you try to dig a hole, you get about this far down, you hit the solid limestone, and that doesn't absorb any water. So, especially when you have the hill country flash flooding events, all that water will eventually rush through all of our major cities. This is a map that actually shows the raw numbers of fatalities with flooding. You can see we're doing pretty good. We've only had 2 fatalities in Medina County since 1996. You cross the county line, 34. So does everybody in Bexar County not know what to do?
Yeah.
Or are there other variables? Population, the number of cars. If I told you that the majority of all these numbers were nighttime driving, okay, well then you can understand where there's more population, there's going to be more people driving, more people susceptible to the low water crossings and everything else.
But also willful ignorance.
Sometimes.
It won't happen to me. I mean, if you have a via bus driver circumvent a road closure sign
Right.
just to get the bus on the other side.
There's, when I look at some of the stories of some of these numbers, right? They're not dumb people. They're not, because they're professionals. So I know they've gotten to where they are by not being a dumb person. What happens, they make a really dumb choice at that exact moment where they get to that road. It's been a long day. They're just trying to get home. They're tired and everything else, and they get to that road, and there's water rushing over, and they probably crossed that road hundreds of times going home, and probably even with some water in it. And they have the big pickup truck, and now they've done it multiple times. And they decide to do it that one last time. And that road is just a little bit deeper with water, or there's debris, or whatever it is, and they're gone. So we had, there was one of the Kerr County ones there. That was someone on the school board that was driving home after a school board meeting. Long-term resident, everything. And the numbers are filled at these. In Bear County, when I first got here, the owner of the County Line restaurant across Cibolo Creek, if you remember that, I think you were here, right?
Right, that was
Like 1 or 2 in the morning.
the spouse was in a vehicle in front.
Yeah.
And they actually saw the other one wash away.
Right. So, horrible stories like this. And a lot of them are long-term residents. They're not all these visitors. Yes, I'm worried about if it's flooding when all these eclipse visitors come. Yes, I am. But generally, when you look at the stories of the people that pass away from flash flooding, these are long-term residents that know this danger. They've heard this slogan before, but you get this false sense of, I've done it multiple times. And that's where it gets a little bit, oh gosh, really? So, preventable. Most of these, yes, all preventable. Bearflood.org. If you are driving into San Antonio or Bear County, they have a great website called bearflood.org where they actually have the low water crossings mapped out. And they turn green for open or red for closed. A lot of the low water crossings have sensors on them, pressure sensors, that measure the depth of water. So we have access to that website, and so we can actually see how deep the water is at some of those low water crossings. So if we don't have a flash flood warning out, we can go on that website and see how deep they are, and sometimes that'll trigger us to issue a flash flood warning if we see how deep, some of those low water crossings are actually getting.
Did we finally get all the access to our 3 flood gauges on data-wise?
I'll have to check.
Okay.
I thought so, but I'll follow up with you on that one. 6, 12, 24. 6 inches of fast-moving water can sweep a person off their feet. 12 inches can sweep a car off the road, and 18 to 24 inches can sweep a large SUV or pickup truck. So it takes a lot less water than you think. The faster the water is moving, the quicker and the more your car will get pushed off the road. So it's a mathematical equation. It really is. And you can't beat math. So 1 foot of water can displace 1,500 pounds. So I checked, like in one of the cars that we have, it's 3,000 pounds. So it's pretty easy. It's 2 feet of water. We'll float it like a boat. If the water is moving fast, that will take even less water then, because 2 feet of water is just to float it. But if it's actually a movement of water, that's another variable. That's another force hitting your car. And so it can actually be less water. Yes, sir.
It just reminded me, when I was really young, it was 30 years ago at least, a lot of flooding in Victoria, working for Dean Word, and I remember they had us working, and it was flooding, they still had us running material out to Victoria. And I remember we were in line, and the guy said, oh man, low board crossing. He went through slow, and he's like, it's good, y'all keep coming, and it was kind of deep.
Yeah.
Well, it was fine the first 3 trucks. Then when a tree was floating across and the next truck hit it, and we were all on each other's tails, and 3 trucks ran into the push blocks.
Right.
It was bad. Then they finally shut us down.
Yeah. And just like the example that you talked about, even if you're in the big pickup truck, maybe it's as heavy as a tank, and you're not going to have any problem getting through. Who's following you? Maybe it's the little tiny car.
The Tesla.
Maybe the one that they don't understand the physics of it, right? That yes, my car is not as heavy as the big pickup truck, all they see visually is the pickup truck making it. And they're not thinking about all this physics and stuff. But what they see is, oh, well, that person made it, I'm just going to follow them. And then that's where it can really
But the other
get
part here on the left side, the water is murky and the road ain't no longer there.
correct.
Right, so that's the even worse.
No, exactly. And especially, this is daytime. Imagine this at nighttime. You can't see depth of water at nighttime.
That happened to my mom years ago, at one of the tornadoes that came in San Antonio, the rains from it.
Yes.
And she had to get to work early. She went across a water crossing a slough that she usually went.
Yeah.
And it was dark, and all of a sudden her car filled with water.
Yeah.
Some people were standing watching on their front porch and managed to come and help
Oh,
her
good,
get out
good. Yeah.
safely.
Yeah.
But
No,
she
can help me
never
quickly.
saw the water.
Right.
I mean, it was that dark.
Oh, there's enough
because
windy
of the
roads here and
running
hills that,
hours,
yeah,
and
you could be
also because of the storm.
going 30, 40 miles an hour. It may not even be raining anymore, right? But
No, it was raining.
well, but right, there's some times though
very
where
dark.
you think the floodwaters have passed, and it takes sometimes a good day or so to sometimes funnel all that, especially if it was raining north of here, right, funneling down through some of those rivers. So
So
yeah, it
they're
could be a
close
nice
to
day.
Edison High School. And there's
Okay.
a big old slough that
Right.
used to, long ago, I don't know if
Right.
it still is, but
Yeah.
used to run through there.
And if I'm not mistaken, there's a horrible example in Divine, I think, right, where the one high school girl.
Yeah, she was talking to her dad, who's one of our JPs,
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the phone. It was
Right.
it was
It was prom night. It was prom night.
And she
Yeah.
was talking to him as she was
Yeah.
going across, and he heard the
Yeah.
whole thing on the
Yeah,
phone.
just tragic stories, right, of
Very
things.
bad.
You know, though, Paul, a lot of people don't think about it, but, so if you have a vehicle that gets 30 miles to the gallon, there's a reason, because it's lighter.
Yeah.
And, people equate to, well, years ago, I could drive through so much water with my car. Well, you can't now because they're a lot lighter.
Yeah. So it's sad. It's sad, and most of them are all preventable, and so it's just hopefully more education, more examples of you get to, and again, turn around, don't drown. We try our best to.
Paul, would you say too that sometimes, I know the big flood that was up at, Comfort area years and years ago, when all those kids on that bus
Yes, yeah.
from the Dallas area,
Right.
people at the camp, they were up high, they were safe, they kept saying, don't go, don't go.
Right.
The water will come down. People are not accustomed to that from some other places where you get this big rush
yes.
of water,
Exactly.
a wall of
Exactly.
water. And he insisted on leaving, the bus driver did, and got halfway across
Yeah.
on the bridge, and the whole bus went.
No, exactly.
They were picking people out of trees, the ones they could
Yeah.
save. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And most of those kids on that bus died.
Yeah. I did a presentation in Wimberley last night, and of course they've had their big flood in 2015. 9 out of 10 people died in a house because the whole house got pushed away. The sheriff came and told them to get out, and they didn't, and before you know it, the whole house kind of went down, and 9 out of 10 people died. And then plus others around that whole time. Yes, sir.
Now, in 2017, we had Harvey,
Yes.
and there was a rain event between Bastrop and LaGrange, and LaGrange got flooded. But the emergency alert system did not only work, but the fire department didn't have time to get everybody to evacuate. So there were no deaths, but
Yes.
trailers were strewn all over the place.
Correct, yeah, some of those, like the floods with Harvey and stuff, especially around Bastrop and the Grange, where it's flat, it takes literally a day or two for the water, like from the Austin area, to make it like all the way to the Grange. They don't have as much, we describe as flash flooding, as they do out here, right? Because the terrain is kind of different.
Yeah, they had
So-
a rain event between Bastrop and LaGrange, and there's no lock or gate.
Correct,
And
correct,
the
yes,
CLRA
yes.
just went like, okay,
Yeah.
45 feet coming at you.
Yeah. But it's still different. And the only way I can describe it is that sort of river flooding there, even when they had 20 inches of rain, again, you can usually walk through the water, you can wade through the water because it's not so swift that you're getting swept away. And so it's, different parts of the state have different type of flooding event. And the ones out here are just really, really swift, like this. Our favorite hail. Hail starts in the middle parts of the thunderstorm here. That's where it mainly forms. It can start as a small chunk of ice. It gets more liquid water on it, kind of like if you look at the top picture there, how there's like ring effect. Those are trips up and down the thunderstorm, getting more liquid water and freezing. Comes down, gets more liquid rain, freezes again. So it gets toppled up and down through the updraft. It goes up and down, below freezing, above freezing, below freezing, below. until it finally gets heavy enough that it falls all the way to the ground. So the stronger the updraft of the storm, the larger the hail can actually get. So when you have things like this form, the updraft has to be strong enough to levitate this in midair. That's a lot of wind. So the updrafts of these storms can be upwards of 50, 75, 100 mile per hour updrafts in thunderstorms
how
to support
high?
the growth.
I know they talk about those thunderhead height. How high would something,
The thunderstorms producing that size hail are easily 50, 60,000 feet tall.
okay, wow, that's incredible.
Yes. So here is the hailstorm. So this is one that came right through here, April 28, 2021. It's a massive supercell. Came in all the way from the Rio Grande River. It actually formed technically in Mexico, crossed the river, paralleled Highway 90, produced massive hail into Genes, holes in everything out there. But the actual biggest piece that we had fell here in Hondo. And so a company came out. They flew out from South Carolina. They met us at the house. And this is them doing an exact 3D scan of the actual hailstone. And so the end result was a 3D print of the exact hailstone that actually fell. So it measured technically 6.4 inches in diameter. It weighed 1.25 pounds. And that was 7 days after it fell is when we measured it. So they had put it in the freezer, but they had not put it in a Ziploc bag. Ice evaporates. So the hailstone was bigger than this when it actually fell. We just don't know by how much. Estimates are it probably would have been easily, I bet, 7 inches in diameter, is my bet. But yes, if that falls at 100 miles an hour, luckily it did not hit anybody. It fell out in the yard. That couldn't kill you. It can. This is now the state record. We do not know of a larger hailstone ever to officially been measured. There's some wives' tale stuff from newspaper clippings from West Texas, 8 inches, but nothing was officially measured. So officially, on the books, that is the largest hailstone that we've ever officially measured in the state of Texas. So we're number one.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
My car wasn't happy.
Did you say we could get
was
a
our RV
shape
park.
file for that we can?
Yeah, believe it or not, so when I was at Trinity University today, they actually have a 3D printer. So I'm going to get with Lorenzo Sanchez there,
Oh,
and I'm going to see if he can get us a print
Yeah.
of it. Because I was thinking about you,
Yeah.
getting a model of it. Yeah. Yep. So storm spotters, pay attention. There's a good way and a bad way to report hail. Bad. Great pictures. But there's no way for me, when I see that picture, to tell how big that hail is. That picture there, is that a zoom up on dime-size hail? Is that baseball-size hail? I don't know. It's just a picture of hail on the ground. I have no idea how big that hail is. So, the middle pictures and the one on the far right, those have references in it. Rulers, coins, golf ball, softball, whatever it is.
Newspapers.
On the back of your card is actually the ruler here. This is on the back of the business card. So you can kind of keep that little ruler handy in your wallet or whatever. Okay? Now, will it be able to measure this really big thing? No. Unless you have two of them, right? But even that, you can get pretty ingenious on computer that even if you have this big hailstone and you only have a quarter here, you can take that image and multiply the quarter out multiple times using Photoshop, and you can have a pretty good guesstimate of how big that hail is. So any sort of known object size is good as a reference in there. But the coins and the sporting goods are typically the easiest thing to do. So when it comes to microbursts, now these are the strong winds that develop from the actual thunderstorms. Think of this as the exhaust of the storm. They're called downdrafts. Every thunderstorm has a downdraft. Every thunderstorm has an exhaust. You feel it. It's that cold rush of air that happens around a thunderstorm. It's just that sometimes they can become very, very strong and damaging. Kind of think of it this way. The taller the thunderstorm, the more oomph it has when it starts to die off and all that rain starts to fall down and kind of disintegrate on itself. So yes, it can be like you're in a hurricane. It can be like you're in a tornado, but they're technically called microbursts. This is how the majority of wind damage happens with storms. Not tornadoes. Tornadoes are very rare. But tree limbs down, power poles, power lines are down after a big storm comes through. It normally isn't a tornado. It is normally this, the microburst. Literally look like a big rain shaft that's actually coming down. It'll hit the ground and then start to go off in a straight line. And so we also call this straight line thunderstorm winds. Basically means it's not a vortex. It's not a spinning wind. It comes down and it pushes outward like that. Kind of like dumping water out of a bucket on the floor. It just splatters outward. And so that will cause pretty significant damage. Very dangerous during airplane landings and takeoffs. If an airplane is landing this way, it has a great headwind. But then if it crosses this point, it then has a tailwind. This is how the famous Delta plane crashed in the 1980s at DFW Airport. It was in a microburst with wind shear, is what they called it. This is typical damage from really big, severe thunderstorms just with a big microburst. To the layman, yeah, you go to an area and that kind of damage, a tornado must have hit. And it's possible, but a lot of times it'll take an investigation, if you will. It's kind of like weather CSI. I'll come out, if I'm kind of not sure, I'll look at the clues, the radar, overlay them, and kind of see what I think may have happened. And in most cases, it's microburst damage is what it is.
So Paul, you just mentioned something I don't know if everybody realizes, and that's that once we report things from the field, you'll actually send people out to verify.
Yeah, especially if it's unknown, right, kind of what it was, or if it was a significant event, we'll usually come out and do that kind of thing. There was at the Castroville Airport, this was a couple years ago, the airport got hit, the hangars and everything got really pummeled really, really bad. That turned out to be a microburst event. I couldn't find any evidence of a tornado. In most cases, insurance, it's wind damage. Doesn't matter if it's a microburst or a tornado. It's very rare that any sort of insurance policy specifically mentions tornadoes. So we only go out to decide that mainly for historical purposes, to be honest. There's a few businesses out there, they've been kind of saying that, in their policy it says tornado stuff, but that's very rare. Most homeowners, it's just wind damage. So whatever it is doesn't really matter. But to us, it does. We like to tell you exactly if it was a tornado.
What other kinds of signs would you be looking for to determine whether it was straight line or a tornado?
Good question. So if a microburst comes down and pushes outward, it will cause most damage to go off mainly in one direction. Literally, it could be that if something happens over downtown Hondo, trees could be blown down on one side of town this way. And then literally on the other side of town, everything is blown down this way. Like literally something came down and pushed outward. If the storm is moving fast and there's a microburst, everything may get pushed off in a one general direction. So if I come to a house and there's a big piece of roof or the famous sheds that are outside everybody's houses in rural America, the whole roof or building is blown and everything's this way. And big chunks and big pieces. Okay, pretty good microburst. If I come to an area that got hit by a tornado, that shed, the pieces are much smaller and they're everywhere. This direction, that direction, everything, because the tornado will spit it out with centrifugal force. So it'll pick it up and throw it, as opposed to just laying it down over here or peeling off the big piece of roof and laying it down right there. So that's some of the stuff that I'll actually kind of look for.
On April 28th, Z's Mart over here at Avenue T and 90, I live right across the T from it. His big, huge metal roof came flying off, landed on my fence, scooted down the street, dug into the pavement.
So that big storm.
I'm thinking that was probably more of a straight line.
It was. We came out and did the survey of that. Most of all the wind damage was microburst. We did find an area which kind of matched up with our radar where there was an embedded tornado, we think, south of town as it was going out. I forget the roads where it was on. But it was, when the winds are 80 to 100 miles an hour, it's hard to tell the difference between what was a microburst and what was a tornado, to be honest. It's really, really difficult. Unless you get into that EF2, which we'll talk about. The stronger tornadoes, you come to a neighborhood, it's like, this is a tornado. You'll never forget it because there's stuff just literally everywhere. Pieces of stuff skewered to the ground, into a wall. And you're like, how did that get there? Well, it's because it was flying at 100 miles an hour and it skewered right through a wall.
Even pieces of hay sometimes.
Yes.
Is that because with the way that the wind is doing, opens it up and flies?
No, it's just that
Because the
when
straw is
something,
not strong enough to impale a building.
at 100 miles an hour it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've seen pieces of cardboard slice through walls.
Okay.
I can't just throw a piece of cardboard and stick in the wall, but at 150 miles an hour, oh yeah, it'll go right through a wall. Plastic forks, all those little kind of weird things that you've heard of. Yeah, there are. I've got some pictures from minor tornadoes that have done that, and I'll actually show some. Trampolines. I could do a whole hour worth of trampoline videos because it's crazy how those things just get launched everywhere. There's a new one that I haven't included yet. John Zeitler found it the other day. He sent it to me, and I need to put it next to your Skywarn. There's a dad, male, outside in the middle of the thunderstorm, trying to secure the trampoline. In the background, there's a trampoline by a neighbor's house rolling by. In the middle of the microburst, he's out there, and he's trying to secure it, and then all of a sudden, of course, the wife is recording all this, right?
Of course.
The whole trampoline gets lifted, and he gets thrown. So it's a great example again of why males sometimes will get.
Because she said, can you hold on to it?
I know, right? Maybe she sent him out there. I don't know.
I mean, would you go out there and hold down the trampoline?
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly.
Before you do that, did I pay your insurance this month?
Yeah, no, exactly. Funnel clouds. Funnel clouds are the precursor to a tornado. The big issue or the big thing that we want the spotters to understand is that you cannot get damage from a funnel cloud. Because by definition, a funnel cloud is not touching the ground. As soon as it touches the ground, it's called a tornado. So a lot of newspaper articles and people will say, a funnel cloud skipped through and did some damage. No, technically that was a tornado, if it was that. A funnel cloud is not on the ground. This video here was actually from Kerrville area. You can kind of see it spinning. They have to be kind of a funnel shape. They should be spinning counterclockwise. So if it's not spinning counterclockwise and it's just kind of hanging there, not doing anything, it may just be a cloud that's just hanging there doing nothing. I'll show examples of just low-hanging clouds that look scary here in a little bit. This is Tornado Alley. It is not the typical graph that you see in a textbook that shows an area from North Dakota down through Oklahoma. That's where it says Tornado Alley is when you go to a little textbook. But these are actual plots of tornadoes. And you can see that it is much more broader than just North Dakota down to North Texas. There's a lot of area just off to our west here from Hondo that has never seen a tornado. Or they've never been verified as a tornado. The only way it makes this map is if the National Weather Service knows about it, it got reported somehow that made the database. We have worked, even since I've been here since 2008, we've had storms come across 90 and along 90, massive storms with a big old hook, which we'll talk about on radar. I know there was a tornado there, but guess what? It happens on a 10,000 acre ranch. I can't jump that fence and go look for damage. I'm not going to do that. So it never goes down as a verified tornado. If we don't hear about the damage, it's a non-event. It doesn't happen. So areas where there's really big open areas, there's been a massive amount of tornadoes out here, but just they're not verified. Cities do not cause tornadoes. But yes, if you kind of look where some of these cities are, there's clusters of tornadoes. That's because people see the tornadoes. And they report the tornadoes, so they become official at that point.
Yeah, so used to live in North Texas, and in Paris, Texas, they had a major tornado come through town in the 70s. And you could actually see the new roofs. If you took an aerial photograph, all the homes that had new roofs
Oh, sure. Yeah,
basically formed the line of.
Very much so. There are different rankings of tornadoes. This is the one in San Antonio that was on the ground that nobody called us about. That is a trampoline.
Oh my gosh.
It's not a top hat.
Blocks away, right from the house, like this. This video was taken from a parking garage on 281. Right around the zoo area, that UIW and Trinity University, that whole area right there. That's the botanical gardens in the background, right here, okay? But notice there is no, I would say, distinct funnel. And maybe, again, this is maybe why nobody just called, because nobody kind of saw that there was a tornado there. It was a rain shower that was very low to the ground. And yes, you can see some debris if you're staring at it. But you can imagine people just driving, they're not, again, you're not seeing a tornado. It's not even a thunderstorm. So maybe that's why. But most tornadoes are like this. They're weak. In fact, when we actually drove the path, many places we couldn't even find damage. Maybe a tree limb that somebody had already picked up, but nothing really substantial. The most substantial damage I saw were some trees and like some pavilion things around at Fort Sam. That was kind of, and some trees just south of Interstate 35 at a graveyard, believe it or not, at a cemetery. There was a lot of tree damage and stuff there. So
That's about like the one that went in between me and Kyle on 1604.
yes, yeah,
That hit Big Country right there near Marbach that day.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we were on either sides of it. I can tell you that even one that size, your good-sized truck will move.
Oh yeah, right. So, but these are the weak tornadoes, and so they happen. I've probably worked well over a dozen tornadoes like this since I've been here in Bexar County and city of San Antonio. Most of them small, a couple of streets worth of a neighborhood, and that's basically about it. So pretty common. Now, when you get into the stronger tornadoes, now they're typically bigger. Not all the time. I can't just visually look at a tornado and tell you what size it is or how big it is. It's the damage that it causes. That's what I do when I go out and do the survey. I will look to see what was damaged, how much it was damaged, and then try to equate that to a wind speed. So if there's a tornado in an open field and nothing is hit, I can't tell you what wind speed that was. Something has to get hit. Something has to get damaged for me to put an estimate. Either a tree, a power pole, a house. There's a lot of different things that can happen to a house. This is video of a tornado that happened on March 21st of 22, east of Austin. A very broad circulation. You can see all the debris flying. This is a drone that the tornado chaser is using. I want you to watch this manufactured home right there.
Wow.
That's how quickly the manufactured homes, travel trailers can get destroyed. Here's a better house on a foundation, and you can see the house stays put, but the roof gets peeled. And then all the insulation gets sucked out of the roof, like that. So that's pretty common. The roof is typically the weak point of most buildings in the houses. So that's typically where you have the first damage. So
What is that black? That black stuff with those stuff, is that cattle?
no, I think those were like bushes and
Oh,
trees. It
okay.
almost looked like there was almost like a tree farm.
Oh.
Almost, where it looked like everything was laid out, almost like a Christmas tree farm. And it looked like a bunch of those had broken off and were all getting blown in. When you were mentioning about like what clues do I look for? When a tornado comes through, it is converging wind. And so watch what happens on this next frame. Okay, watch these bushes and trees, and everything is blowing into the center of the tornado here. See all this stuff? It's all getting sucked into the tornado. So those are other clues that I look for. Where were things brought in from? A converging pattern is a tornado. A diverging pattern of damage is a microburst. Like that. But then you can just see, so a lot of times I'll come to an area and there's just pink everywhere, and it's the insulation from a house or from a roof. Like that. Now this is one of the houses in Round Rock, Texas. This was the whole roof was actually blown off. When I see that damage of a house, that's an EF2 tornado, enhanced Fujita scale 2. So that's winds well over 100 miles an hour, into that 120 range, maybe something like that. The larger tornadoes, the ones that become catastrophic with mass fatality events, are typically the high-end EF3s, the EF4s, and the EF5s. You can kind of see again where the EF4s have been in the United States. Again, mainly middle part of the country. And then EF5s, only a handful in Texas since 1950. The last one being Gerald in 1997 was the last EF5 that we've had.
Didn't Gerald have another one?
Oh, yeah.
Another really bad?
Yeah, Gerald has had several tornadoes, but others were smaller. Like even just in the last 3 years, I think they've had 2 or 3 other tornadoes up near there. It's just further north. The further north you go, you get some smaller tornadoes like that.
That big one, they had to actually go to the tax office and find where houses were supposed to have been.
Yeah.
And it sucked pavement off the
Yeah,
ground.
Yes.
it looked like a road grader had gone through the
Yep.
road, everything down.
That's the Gerald tornado up there off of Interstate 35. If you drive the interstate north of Georgetown, right as you get to the Bell County line, just north of Gerald, there's a very large, nice TxDOT rest stop. And there they have concrete bunkers, tornado shelters. And inside those tornado shelters are pictures of the Gerald tornado. Kind of like a historical perspective of what happened back in 1997. And to Mark's point, this was a house there in Gerald. It is obliterated. It's nothing standing. The walls are gone. I mean, the stuff is just gone like that. And so that's what 200-mile-per-hour winds will do. So if you're in the bathtub and everything that I'm going to tell you to do for tornado safety, you still die. That's the reality of having a tornado that large. You have to be either underground or in a concrete bunker. And so luckily we don't have them a lot. You mentioned about the roofs. So a lot of times it is scoured. The earth is scoured as a large tornado comes through like that. At 30,000 feet in an airplane, you can see the brown line on the ground, and that is the tornado path as it has kind of gone through. Though that tree is debarked. It's sandblasted with dirt and rock and everything else, so it's quite brutal.
Up where one of my brothers lives in Lima, or near Lima, Ohio, Xenia actually.
Okay, Xenia is very famous, right?
And they had 2 different times, same path nearly.
Yeah.
And it was bad, but it was one of those that went through more than one state.
Yeah.
Total supercells.
Yeah, some of these
incredible.
large tornadoes can be on the ground for 20, 30, 50 miles. So you can imagine the path of destruction. If it goes through a populated area, I mean, that's catastrophic.
But it
that
missed their
stuff.
house and their block.
Well, that's good.
Other blocks around were
Yeah,
gone.
gone. Questions about tornadoes before we move on? Those little dust devil things that you see on a clear weather day, they're a vortex. They're not a tornado. Water spouts, though, tend to be, that is a type of weak tornado. Okay, it kind of forms differently than the really big catastrophic tornadoes. It actually forms from the ground and goes up to the rain shower. And they don't really move much. So if you're ever out on a lake or on the ocean, you see a water spout, you can literally just go around it or go somewhere else. Like that.
You know, Paul, you also have, and I think it's caused from the fire itself, but in large wildfires, you can have a fire tornado.
You can have a fire tornado. Basically, anytime you have a lot of air rising rapidly, like you do in a fire because it's so hot, as the air goes up, air has to come in to replace it. And if there happens to be a little bit of a spin there, just like how a little dust devil happens in a parking lot, you can have these videos of literally a fire-nado. And sometimes they can get quite large enough historically. We've seen some of them on Doppler radar, which is scary to think that here's a half-mile wide tornado that's made of fire. That's what's kind of crazy about some of that kind of stuff. And there's some videos out there where you can actually kind of see it. It's kind of crazy, but yeah. So, how do thunderstorms form? This is kind of the last half here. How do they form? We need humidity outside, we need instability, and we need a spark to set it all off. Okay, so you need fuel, a spark plug, and then you can get a thunderstorm like we got today. Big billow up, that's the air rising rapidly, that's the updraft, that's the fuel rising. In about 15 minutes or so, you can kind of see that this area is much higher than the rest of the other puffy clouds. So that may be the one that's actually going to develop into an actual thunderstorm. Then, after about 20 minutes of being developed, now it starts to rain, and that rain comes down and produces that exhaust that we talked about, that cool rush of air. So now you have a mature thunderstorm. This is where you could actually get some small hail, some gusty winds. This is not severe. We're not talking about severe storms yet, just thunderstorms in general. Kind of like the ones we were getting today. Okay? And then, after it starts to rain, the problem is that it almost literally rains on itself. I have this video of a water fountain on a non-windy day. And what happens? The water goes up, the water comes down right on top of itself. That's what happens on a normal thunderstorm. Normal thunderstorms form vertically, up and down. And so when fuel goes up, the rain comes down, the rain actually literally replaces all that warm, humid air that it was using for fuel, and before you know it, it is now rained out because there's no more fuel around. Literally what happens, that cold air comes in, pushes away all of that really humid air that it was using for gas. Okay? That's a normal thunderstorm from beginning to end, about an hour. That's why you see a storm coming on a normal, like, summer day, and you get all excited because you're about to get rain, and then what happens? Nothing. The neighbor down the street got all the rain. By the time it got to you, you got a sprinkle. where you got that gust of wind, it felt better, felt cool, but you just got the exhaust of it and the whole thing died out. That's the normal, typical thunderstorm. Spotty rainfall. To get a severe storm, you need another ingredient to take it to the next level. And that ingredient is called wind shear. Very commonly, if you ever watch the news and they talk about the jet stream, where the jet stream is going to be across the United States, that is what we're talking about. And it does something very special to the thunderstorm itself. If you have wind speeds increasing with height, like 20 mile per hour at the ground, 50 mile per hour from the west at 10,000 feet, and then maybe 100 mile per hour wind at maybe 20,000 feet or 30,000 feet, that's called wind shear. Changing wind speed with height. Notice the thunderstorm there is not vertical. It is now literally being tilted over because of the taller wind speeds, or the higher wind speeds at the higher level. Have you ever tried to water your grass on a windy day? Doesn't really work very well, because where the sprinkler you have it, you know, it's blowing on the driveway, or it's blowing in the street, or whatever it is. I got to take the water fountain video on a windy day. This is what happens. This is why a storm becomes severe, in that as all the rain is happening, literally the wind blows it downwind. That's why sometimes, literally, you can be driving, you're using the windshield wipers, and you don't know where that rain is coming from. It's like I can't even see the storm around. It's because literally the raindrops are being blown. They're very lightweight, obviously. Well, what we're doing by inducing wind in the upper atmosphere with this picture here, we're blowing the raindrops out of the storm. All that rain and exhaust is happening now miles away from where all the fuel is. Instead of falling on top of itself, like the normal thunderstorm, it's now being blown away and it's being separated. And what we've done is we've created a perfect engine, fuel and exhaust area that doesn't get disrupted. Until something happens. Maybe it runs out of gas, maybe it goes 200 miles away, and then finally the ingredients aren't there. But this is how we have these storms develop on the Mexican mountains, get off the mountain, cross the Rio Grande, travel 3 hours along Highway 90, hit Hondo, like this storm here. This storm continued into Bexar County. It then went up into New Braunfels, and then all the way up by the Austin area. Like all in 8 hours. So it didn't die off in 20 minutes like a normal storm, because it was in perfect balance. It had this exhaust and this fuel area, all because of this wind shear. The key to forecasting severe storms is, where is this wind shear going to be? Where are the winds going to be strongest? And if we know where that's going to be, we have a pretty good idea of the outlook of, we're going to have a slight risk of severe weather, a moderate risk of severe weather, because that's where the ingredients are. So that's the key.
And that's why you need radar on all different levels.
Well, and some of these wind speeds we don't necessarily get by radar. We launch weather balloons still around the world twice a day. Airplanes that are landing and taking off from the major airports are taking wind measurements for us. The satellites that we have flying, 22,000 miles up above the Earth's surface, are taking measurements of the atmosphere when it's clear skies. That's how we can get all these wind measurements, and that's where we know where the jet stream is and so forth. And the weather models help with all that too. So,
Who launches those balloons? Is that
the National Weather Service.
So it is the National Weather.
In the United States, yes. And then outside of the United States, most countries have a federal weather service.
The Chinese Weather Service.
Yes, they have it. Japan and Australia and most countries in the Caribbean, Mexico, there's 1,000 launch sites around the world that launch weather balloons twice a day.
We have a group in the club that they track those balloons.
Okay.
The ones that they put
Yeah.
LoRa devices on.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so when we don't have a lot of wind shear or that wind aloft, we get normal thunderstorms that literally die out in 20 or 30 minutes. So they usually don't get a lot of issues. Mark isn't worried about those sort of thunderstorms here for Hondo and for Medina County. Now, when we do get a severe weather threat, we get supercell thunderstorms a lot of times and squall lines. These are the severe storms. These are the ones that cause damage, the ones that cause havoc, the ones that will cause issues and recoveries and the whole sort of bit. So again, as we know where the wind shear is going to be, and that ingredient per se, then we'll kind of know where the severe storms could fire up. Visual clues to severe storms. If it's really cool looking, it's probably pretty strong or severe. If you're trying to break out your camera to take a picture of it, it's like, oh my gosh, come look at this. You're saying that because it looks cool, and it looks amazing, and it looks like a piece of popcorn or cauliflower, and it was severe. Driving in, there were some storms that were looking really, really good, and sure enough, we started issuing severe thunderstorm warnings this afternoon around Austin because they had that look to it. They were definitely producing hail
North
because
of
they had
Hondo, it was for a while just completely black.
Yeah.
Big clouds and black as night.
Another
It dissipated.
nice thunderstorm here. This is the anvil. That's the top of it's hitting basically a lid in the atmosphere, so it's creating that mushroom top. But this crisp edge, the popcorn look, that means it has a strong updraft. And so that means it's a strong to severe thunderstorm when you see that sort of look to it. And again, on a given day with a really big storm like this, we're getting tons of photos sent to us. Look at this, I can't believe it. On a normal thunderstorm day, nobody's taking pictures of anything because they've seen it their whole lives. And it's like, yeah, it's a thunderstorm, whatever. But these things have a visual look that is like, wow, let's take a look at this. Off in a distance, you may see a bulge on top of the anvil. And that's called an overshooting top. And what causes that is that the updraft is so strong, it is punching into the stratosphere by several thousand feet. That means the updraft is so strong, like that 100-mile-per-hour updraft, like to produce hail like that, and it can't just stop when it hits the lid of the atmosphere, so it goes into the stratosphere. So.
And then those hailstones basically.
Oh yeah, this storm here is producing hailstones. Definitely, because that lid is probably at 40 or 50,000 feet, so again, the storm is building beyond that, which is not normal. Most storms stop at that lid of the atmosphere. This one goes into it, so you know it's a strong and severe storm. Yep.
Pressure.
So, where you want to look as a storm spotter for a tornado is typically in this area, the rain-free basin. This is rain and hail over here, whatever. But here, where the air is rising vertically, that's the updraft. That is where the tornado may form. As the example of that trampoline that was getting tossed up in the air, the trampoline and that tornado pulls things up because the tornado is part of an updraft. So where the updraft is, visually, this is where you will want to see if there's a possible tornado forming. Mm-hmm. Underneath that rain-free base, you may get something called a wall cloud. A wall cloud is your first visual that there is something maybe forming. It is rotating counterclockwise. So this lowering that you see is a wall cloud. It's attached to the bottom of the storm. It is lower than the rest of it, and it would be spinning counterclockwise. This is the process that is going to be going into possibly forming a funnel, then maybe forming a tornado. This happens a lot and never produces a tornado, and never produces a funnel cloud. Everything has to be perfect to get a tornado at the end. But as long as you're seeing some sort of rotation underneath the bottom of the thunderstorm where this rain-free base is, that's a good clue that something's going on. It's definitely probably a severe thunderstorm. If you're getting that much rotation in the storm itself to produce a wall cloud and this lowering, we probably have a severe thunderstorm warning out. Probably. Because it's just a strong storm already. Notice where they're at. Probably Kansas. Probably Oklahoma, where you can see literally 30 miles away. There's some places around here you can do that, but other places, you get on the northern part of Medina County, you're not seeing 30 miles away. You can't see 2 miles away. So some parts of the area, it's easy to be a storm spotter, but then other parts, good luck. Trees, hills, everything else are kind of in the way of actually good visual like that. There's a good view from a big thunderstorm off in the distance. A lowering right there is the wall cloud. All the rain and hail is being blown that way. That's the downdraft. But again, you would be looking here to see any sort of funnel or any sort of rotation. Okay? And so that rotation, you call in and you say something like, yeah, there's the bottom of the storm is spinning. I think there's a lowering. It may be like a wall cloud. We'll go on our Doppler radar, see where you're at, and see if we can get a verification of that. Because if it's spinning like that, we should be able to see a spin on our Doppler radar that the updraft is spinning. That's called a mesocyclone. So it could be that we're actually seeing that. Well, we can get to our lines of thunderstorms. We don't normally get a ton of hail with big lines of storms. We usually don't get flooding rains with lines of storms. What we do get is pretty widespread wind damage with lines of thunderstorms. And the reason why is because they move in so fast. This line of storms that just came through Hondo and just came through San Antonio on this loop was probably moving at like 50 miles an hour. If it's moving at 50 miles an hour, the winds are pushing it at 50 miles an hour. And if the winds are pushing it, that means the winds can come down to the ground and be 50 mile per hour winds. So typically the faster that storm is moving, that's kind of a clue that you could get that speed of wind to come from that thunderstorm. So there can be little tornadoes along the edge of this. They tend to be on the smaller side if they happen. But mainly, again, this could be widespread wind damage from Austin all the way down through San Antonio. Just with it's a lot of cleanup. It's a lot of limbs, power outages, that kind of stuff. So not a ton of loss of life with this, but just a lot of work, a lot of busy work. By far, the supercells are the ones that cause the most havoc, the most danger, the most damage, the most fatalities, everything. The Hondo storm was a big supercell that came in from the west. It had kind of a hook on it. This is what a hook is on radar. The reason why the hook is there is because this whole area of the storm is the updraft, and it's spinning counterclockwise, and it wraps rain into it, and it creates that hook. This doesn't mean there's a tornado on the ground, but it does mean there's enough circulation here that it's being watched closely. We may have a severe thunderstorm warning out on this already, and it could be we have a tornado warning on it, but we can have that even if there's no visual of a tornado. But I bet if you're standing near there, I bet you're seeing a wall cloud, and I bet you're seeing some sort of rotation counterclockwise. So these are the scary ones. The ones that hit Round Rock, a lot of the videos that I've shown with tornadoes were all supercell tornadoes. They tend to be the larger ones. The Divine one that happened back in 2012 was a supercell. It produced 3 different tornadoes like that. What would you see in different regions? So if this is the storm itself, here's the hook. Anywhere here, if you're standing here looking that direction, you would probably see something like this. The lowering, the wall cloud, maybe a funnel trying to form. You would technically be in a pretty safe place as long as that storm is moving away from you. What's tricky, are you really sure which way the storm is moving? That's where you got to have one of those little apps and everything else. Now, you also need to know too that sometimes the storms can shift direction. We call them right movers. To where all day, all the storms are moving southwest to northeast. And then all of a sudden the storm does this. And starts diving southeast. It's called a right mover. It probably has a lot of rotation in it. And so that's why you have to be careful. That's why we don't teach storm chasing here. Because it's just too dangerous. Especially around here where you have hills and windy roads and low water crossings and everything else. If you're off to the north there, like where that other arrow is up there, and the storm is moving in that direction, you're going to see this ugly cloud called a shelf cloud, something very low to the ground. Not necessarily severe, but it is low to the ground, and it signifies that you're about to get hit with the exhaust. Okay, all that downdraft of air, the cold air, the possibly some hail and everything else. And then eventually, that if this is a tornado, eventually you could get hit by that tornado too. So you'll get everything. But visually you won't be able to see hardly anything because you're going to be in the rain the whole time. So, again, if the motion is that way, being on the south end of it, you should have pretty good visual of maybe what's kind of going on. Which direction do most of our severe storms come from here?
Southwest.
Southwest, west, even sometimes northwest, or even north. It's very rare for us to get anything severe coming in from the east, the southeast, or the south. That's stuff coming in from the Gulf of Mexico. There's thunderstorms there, especially in the summertime, and maybe you can get some rain bands from a hurricane. But as far as true severe weather, most of the stuff happens to our westerly component of the compass and moves generally from west to east across the region here, in general terms. This is a supercell that did some bad stuff to our Doppler radar out on Highway 90. That was back in 2001. 100 mile per hour microburst winds and baseball-sized hail. No tornado. Most supercells are at least severe. It just still a small fraction produce the actual tornadoes. Again, tornadoes are rare. But supercells, we'll always have a severe thunderstorm warning out on the supercell probably. And that one actually came out of the due north. That one was one of those that came out of the due north, like that. Are these funnel clouds or are these tornadoes? Look at the ground. Do you see evidence of it hitting the ground? And the answer is technically yes, because you see this dust getting kicked up. The dust getting kicked up is evidence that that circulation is in existence all the way to the ground. Even though you can't technically see the funnel part is just cloud. So if there's a little bit of dry air at that lowest level, sometimes the cloud has a hard time forming. Or maybe it hasn't sucked up enough dust or dirt from a farm field that we can actually see visually the entire thing. But those would be both reported as tornadoes on the ground. Okay? Sometimes the tornadoes are hidden by rain, hard to see. The rain wraps around it, and all of a sudden it looks like you're driving into a big rain shaft when in fact there may actually be a tornado back there. That's exactly how the big hailstorm here would have been. You wouldn't have been able to see anything, but yes, we think there was a small tornado in there somewhere, but you would have been able to see it. That was what we call an HP supercell, a high precipitation supercell. A lot of rain in there, a lot of rain. And then we have these really scary looking clouds called scud clouds. Scud clouds, they're scary looking. They're low to the ground, they're hanging down. If I issue a tornado warning, most of you will go outside because you want to see it. It's nature, you want to see let's see if I can see it, right? That's kind of how people are. I understand it fully, I don't condone it, but I know probably I would too. The issue is that if we issue a tornado warning and we have just a bunch of people going outside, they're going to want to see where that tornado is. And if they see just a low-hanging cloud like this that kind of maybe has a little bit of a funnel shape, ooh, that must be the tornado, right? Yes, I'm one of your storm spotters in Hondo. I see the tornado.
But it's not touching the ground, is it?
Correct, it is not. And the other thing you have to look for is it actually spinning counterclockwise? These scud clouds, as they're called, do not spin counterclockwise on a vertical axis. They're just low-hanging, scary-looking clouds. And there's a lot of times a lot of low-hanging, scary-looking clouds around thunderstorms. Most of them happen in that rain-cooled air area, which is not the favorite area to getting tornadoes. Tornadoes happen in that warm area of the thunderstorm, where the updraft is. So, just kind of lessons learned. This was the same day of the Divine tornado. Lacoste in southwest Bexar County got hit, and this was a house in southwest Bexar County. That whole roof is gone. So this was an EF2 tornado that I did there. But the picture is saying that, okay, the upstairs is not the place to be. Downstairs is the place to be, typically, in all buildings, houses, businesses, whatever. Try to be at the downstairs level or underground. Honestly, we don't have any place to go underground around here. So downstairs, away from windows and away from exterior walls. Technically, yes, you can build a house with an indestructible room. If you build a house from scratch, you can build a room, maybe it's the pantry, maybe it's the closet that's concrete walled, foot thick, cement bar, rebar, everything. That's your storm shelter now. Or you can actually get prefabricated rooms that you can actually bury halfway underground.
Wasn't Texas Tech working on something like that some years ago?
They have a wind laboratory that shoots 2x4s.
I know.
And so they
Videos
test
of it.
things like the strength of these sort of structures.
In the DFW area, homeowners association don't allow for additional buildings on the property. So they have tornado shelters that fit in a 2-car garage.
Yeah. FEMA has plans of how to build a storm shelter, some of it concrete and others like steel sheathing, right? Like steel rooms that you can create. I've known several people, especially up there by Gerald. There's a company up in Gerald that actually makes those below ground sort of shelters where you dig a big hole, you bury it, and you half bury it back up, and there's a door. The only bad thing with that is that you have to go outdoors to go into the shelter. And that's not ideal, but it's better than maybe being in a very, susceptible house or something.
I have one of them.
Oh, do you really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's 8 by 8, you can stand up in it.
Is it buried half underground?
A little more than half.
A little more than half?
Yeah. Delivered from Oklahoma.
No kidding.
$3,500.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. It has an air vent, I'm assuming, right? Has a little
Inlet and outlet.
Okay. This is what you're protecting yourself from.
Yeah.
This was our San Antonio February event that crossed 281, right there by Trinity University and the Quarry Shopping Center. You were, I think, here when that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of EF2 damage, a lot of EF1, EF2 damage, homes without roofs. I remember in our vehicle, all of the media vans all had flat tires because of all the debris from all the houses, the nails, everything else, the 2x4s they were running over in the streets, because remember, stuff is just everywhere. Pieces of 2x4 with nails and everything was everywhere. So a lot of flat tires, people driving around. These are weak tornadoes. Overall, these are all weak tornadoes, and look what it did for the exterior walls. Stuff puncturing right through all that. Worst places to be: mobile homes and manufactured homes, vehicles, school buses. Those items can all get thrown or toppled. You don't want to be in those, because then your risk of fatality is much higher, because you're rolling, you're getting thrown with the wind and everything else. I have this picture here because that's exactly what you should not be doing on a highway, is blocking traffic. A lot of people are doing that so they don't get hailed on, but in fact you're now blocking traffic for being able to exit and get to a safe building. So you gotta understand what you're doing. Yeah, you may not want to get hailed on, but now you're putting these people at a lot of risk. The misnomer, and a famous video back in the 90s of a news crew hiding underneath an underpass, started some trend that people would get out and hide underneath the underpass to protect. And in fact, what happens, the wind from Bernoulli effect actually gets stronger as it funnels through that actual overpass. That one incident was a success because, yes, the tornado went around them or whatever it was. I've seen the trailer for the new Twister movie. And it kind of looks like they're going to show a very similar thing, and I hope they don't, because that's exactly what we don't want people to do.
Yeah, they were doing that in the first movie.
Yes.
You know, and,
Yeah.
you know, people were thinking, oh, that's the safe thing.
Oh, I know. And then that's the problem, is that, people go and see these movies, they assume that everything in those movies are the right things to do. So I'm hoping the trailer just is kind of, just a little clip it, and I'm making an assumption there.
So the National Weather Service did not advise?
I have no idea. I have
We
no
know
idea.
better than that nonsense. We get our real news from TikTok.
Same.
There's the 1-800 number. That's the unlisted phone number that's on that business card. Okay? Do not share it on social media. Do not share it with anybody that's not been at this training. Because I don't want someone just calling and saying, yeah, I'm going to Chicago next week. No, I want people calling this phone number. We have public phone numbers for that. People call us for that, but I don't want them using this phone number. This phone number is unlisted. There is no voicemail on it. It rings right to our operations area 24/7. You pick it up. We want you to be hearing, yeah, I'm a storm spotter and I'm wherever you are, and we're getting whatever you're getting. 10-second phone call. That's all it has to be. Yeah.
Paul, I want them to call you, but don't forget to call me as well.
What? Paul doesn't call you back?
Sometimes I know about it first, sometimes Mark knows about it first. We're texting back and forth. But yeah, calling 911, calling the National Weather Service, all of that should all be kind of in the same minute, right? Literally, it should all be happening at the same time.
Well, and if you put a weather warning out, you also have spotters are activated or not, right? Isn't that one of the lines?
We don't consider it, as soon as we're done in about 5 minutes here, you're an activated storm spotter 24/7. I'm not going to activate anybody. What's silly is that if something happens and you're not activated, does that mean you're never going to call? Like if you see a tornado on a day that is not like that morning in San Antonio, maybe that was the issue. Maybe all the storm spotters are like, well, nobody activated me, so I'm not going to call them. I never want you to start thinking like that. If you see something, say something. You've seen that so many times now, post 9/11. Well, it goes with weather too. If you see something, say something. It's that simple. But yes, there are other parts of the country where literally the county will send people out on a grid, and you sit there in a car and you wait, and you let us know what you see. I'm never going to do that. I hope you're never going to do that, because that's way too
We
dangerous.
do that for weather. What I have asked our operators to do is that if they're seeing weather, to report it. And they'll normally report it through their leadership, and then I'll get a report.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not safe to go chase anything down or to be outdoors, right? Especially if significant stuff is happening. This is what, on the back of the business card, these are the things that I want you to report. Hail of any size, wind damage, flooding rains, a tornado, funnel cloud, a rotation underneath the storm, and then even winter precipitation, sleet, freezing rain, snow, any sort of that, okay? So,
Hail of any size?
correct, even though it's not severe. And the reason why is that if we're watching a storm on radar, yeah, we think we're getting hail. We don't know what size. We get a call. You're getting dime-size hail. Perfect, because we can see on radar and make a ground kind of assessment for a calibration, right? Storm right now, we're getting dime hail. 2 volume scans later, 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, the storm intensifies on radar. I can make a really good assumption then that the hail's going to get bigger than dime size. So I already have a baseline of what the atmosphere is doing this day. The atmosphere every day is different. The temperatures, the distribution of temperatures, everything. So just because one storm looks like this one day and produces this size hail does not mean the next day the same storm is going to produce the same size hail. Every day is different. And so that's why even, P and dime size hail reports are valuable for us. So we at least know. We can all then pass that on to the media get on TV, and everybody's kind of been aware of what kind of hail we're getting. Like that, yeah. And then finally, Cocoras. We get a lot of rainfall. One of the brochures that I had in the back is a Cocoras brochure. And this is a rainfall and hail reporting network, mainly for the rainfall. It started in Colorado, and it spread to all states in the country. And the way it works is that they get a really good rain gauge like this. They then go onto the website, and they join there. This is where you buy the rain gauge. It's like a $35 rain gauge. And then you get a login to report how much rain actually fell. Now, as general public, you can go on this website right now and just see how much rain fell on every 24 hours. For all the people that are already reporting in this reporting kind of group called Cocoras. So, but to report the rainfall, you have to have a login. You have to kind of join. I am Comal number 64. Up there. That is my login. I like to report via the app that they have. The date fills in automatically, the time fills in automatically, and then I put in how much rain fell. So what I do is I wake up in the morning, as I'm getting out of the driveway, my gauge is there on my fence, I will stop the car, I will get out, I will go check the rain gauge, I will climb back into my car, open up the app in about 10 seconds, I've done it, and then I'm off to work. And I've now reported, and now I am data on the map. All these little circles are people that have this gauge, went on that morning and reported the rainfall total. 24-hour rainfall total. It is all archived for you to look at, even if you're not a member. Daily for the last 15 years. So, this was one of our big events. This is the Halloween flood of 2015. Those red circles are upwards of anything more than 7 inches of rain, maxed out at 15.63, right along Kyle. Right there on Interstate 35. That person was actually calling us hourly and giving us updates on the rain gauge of how much it was falling. So we're not telling you to do that. You don't have to do that, especially if lightning is thundering out.
That's useful information.
It is. It's very useful information, but I also don't want you,
Coming down like that.
getting dangerous.
So do we need to use this particular kind, or there are now also like weather stations that you can buy for
Good
your
question.
that has, a wind strength,
Right,
wind direction, and all the other stuff that comes with
For
it?
this network, they want you to have this gauge. And the reason why is that, yes, you can have a weather station that has an automated rain gauge. That rain gauge does not collect the rain. It passes through it.
Okay.
The most accurate rain gauges we get, and we have, are the ones that collect all the rain, and then you do a post-measurement of it. So that would be close, but they really want all the same measuring equipment for this thing. It's a scientific integrity thing, right? If you use all different pieces of equipment, you're going to get kind of scattered results on things. Plus, it needs to be a rain gauge that has 100th increment measurements. Most rain gauges you get at the feed store and whatever don't have 100 little marks on it to measure 1/100th of an inch. This one particularly does. This inner tube holds exactly 1 inch of rain if it's full. And then it will overflow into the bigger tube, which holds 10 inches of rain. So this one will actually overflow 11 inches, like that. Like I said, they want a report typically every morning, so it's a 24-hour rainfall total. They encourage people to put zeros in for days it does not rain. Okay? Are you a Cocoa Rods member already?
Yeah.
Oh, very good. How easy is it to tell them?
Simple. You just log in,
Put in your rainfall?
and then it brings up that.
Right. One thing that you may have the most difficulty of is, well, where do I put the gauge? Not every yard is ideal. It needs to be pretty far away from trees. The gauge needs to be pretty far away from the houses, so it doesn't get weird blockage or anything else. So try to put it as far away from stuff as you can so it doesn't get blocked and you don't have that sort of issue there. But I can zoom all the way in. Your name is not given on the public website. What's given is the location of your gauge. So I've zoomed in on my gauge. My name is not listed anywhere on the public website. But if I hit Data Explorer, I can actually see that I've had this was as of March 1st, 9.73 inches. So, and I've had an additional 3 inches since then. So I'm over 13 inches for the year so far.
You guys are smoking us over here.
Yes, I am. In 2022, I only had 15 inches of rain, so I'm almost already surpassing what I got in all of 2022. So my grass is green right now, but not enough rain has fallen to fill up Canyon Lake. None of the rivers made all my weeds grow. And I've got a whole lot of weeds, so my weeds look great. My weeds look great like that. So.
Only weeds are looking great.
Anyway, so it's a great little system. It's called Citizen Science. So it's really kind of neat to get involved. If you have a rain gauge, get a better one and start reporting daily. It's kind of neat to be able to kind of see, and then everybody can use the information. Mark can use it, I can use it, the Edwards Aquifer can use it, hydrologists, use it to see how much rain actually fell, because we have estimates from radar, but this is where, again, we ground truth it to actual rain gauges and actual data.
You can go there if you don't join though and see the data.
Oh yes. You can just log in as soon as you get home. Go to cocoarods.org, which is on the backside of the brochure, and you can click any day of the last 15 years and zoom into Medina County and see who has a gauge.
See how sad it's been for the last few years.
I know, it's kind of depressing because you kind of see with those normal thunderstorms how you get gypped all the time. Like someone down the road got all the rain and you got nothing. So.
Well, Sabinal, one of the ladies at the newspaper is from Sabinal, she said, we get rain and they get nothing lately.
Right. It all averages out over about 100 years. Just think of that. Right?
Were you around when we had I'm trying to remember, I was still teaching at the high school. And we had a tornado at night. We were at a football game. It was Friday night. Brain lightning off in the distance. Mm-hmm. They played one play after the half. I was just livid that they did that, so they didn't have to have a, replay.
Yeah.
Got home, and within minutes after my husband got there, he was the counselor at the high school, we were in the closet. That was the one where the tornado was coming down Highway 90 and then split. Part of it hit the north part of town and part of it came this way.
I don't know what year that would have been. I got here in 2008.
It was before that, because I retired in 2005, so it had to be about 2003, 2004.
Okay.
It was in October.
Interesting.
Believe it or not. Then the next April, we had a terrible, terrible hailstorm. It looked like a drive-by shooting at my house because I have, that kind of siding.
Yeah, siding, there were holes and
Yeah,
stuff.
so the next April, we hadn't even gotten our roof fixed from October, and then some more damage in April, so it probably.
You guys get a lot of weather out here.
Yeah. And that was another one that came from
Right.
Mexico. Started.
So, business cards, Cocoa Mark, anything to close it
I
up?
wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. A great crowd. Thank you very much. So, unless there's anything else, you are free to go. If there's any, go ahead. Yes.
I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Is there a meteorologist in the San Antonio area that's a ham radio operator, that